In our previous videos, we've walked through some difficult and uncomfortable terrain: racism, whiteness, socialized psychonarcissism, the eugenics movement, and the ideology of transhumanism. At first glance, these may appear to be separate subjects, each with its own history, its own vocabulary, its own victims and perpetrators. But when you look deeper, a pattern begins to surface, a living thread that connects them all. They are not separate. They are different branches of the same tree. A consciousness pattern that believes some lives are more valuable, some minds more advanced, some bodies more perfect. All of them, in their own way, spring from the same soil: control, hierarchy, and extraction. This is why I say that eugenic transhumanism is not a side note in history. It is the central ideology disguised as human progress. It promises evolution, but its roots are steeped in arrogance. It invites us to transcend humanity while quietly erasing the spirit that makes humanity sacred. Yet, what we are exploring here goes far beyond history or politics. It is also a spiritual conversation. By the end of this video, my hope is that you will feel, not just understand, the deeper forces at play beneath these systems. Across my own spiritual journey, one truth has pressed upon me again and again. The great struggle between good and evil is not an old myth. It is alive, happening right now, playing out through human psychology, through culture, and through technology. Many spiritual teachers have spoken of it, but because we live in a physical world, we often forget that it is more important than it truly is. Our society trains us to see only the material, to measure only what can be touched or proven, and in that narrowing of wisdom, we lose sight of the immensity of this spiritual conflict. One lesson I've learned through years of spiritual warfare is that what we call the devil, or the shadow of the shadow, or the adversarial force, has an intimate knowledge of karma, or divine order. He knows how the cosmic laws of cause and effect truly operate. But because these archetypes cannot violate divine order directly, they work through proxy. They work through us. They reshape our desires, our thoughts, our fears, until we, with our own free will, choose actions that serves them. When we act from hate, greed, distrust, or superiority, we become vessels for these types of energies. And when we do, it is we, not those forces, who must answer to divine law. The burden of karma rests on the one who chooses, not the one who tempts. This is the subtle genius of the shadow, to convince humanity to enact its will while believing it acts in its own. This is the same psychology found in the human world among psychopaths and dark narcissists. They manipulate from the shadows, creating followers, flying monkeys, as psychology calls them, who defend them, protect them, and enact their will, often at their own peril. In spiritual terms, this is what I call karma dumping. The manipulator transfers their spiritual debt onto others through deception and control. The system remains intact because the many carry the curse created by the few. Think of how this plays out collectively. Entire nations accumulate karma when they build prosperity on the suffering of others. Ideologies carry karma when they normalize cruelty or the devaluation of life. Even technologies, when born from greed or domination, inherit the vibration of their intention. We often imagine karma as something purely personal, but it is also communal, cultural, and generational. The imbalance of one era ripples into the next until confronted with truth. And that brings us to the heart of this conversation: spiritual identity. When human beings forget who they are at the deepest level, when they lose connection to divine origin, new identities emerge to fill the void: race, gender, nation, power. These identities, while not inherently evil, become prisons when they replace spiritual awareness. They become tools of separation, racism, transhumanism, narcissistic culture. All of these are symptoms of a collapsed spiritual identity, a forgetting of our shared origin in divine consciousness. You see, bad weeds flourish where the soil is richest. The more potential a person or collective holds, the more fiercely the shadow seeks to embody it. Humanity's potential for love and creation is vast, which is precisely why the forces of division work so hard, to deform it. So, the question becomes, how do we heal? The first step is recognition. To recognize the shadow does not mean to worship it nor to fear it, but to see it clearly. You cannot heal what you refuse to name. The second step is accountability. Spiritual, emotional, and collective accountability. No ideology, no flag, no identity exempts us from the laws of divine order. Karma flows where consciousness is directed. And finally, the third step, remembrance. Remembering the truth of who we are. Remembering that divine justice is not punishment. It is balance. It is love correcting destruction and distortion. When we as a species return to our spiritual identity, the systems built on extraction will begin to crumble. For darkness has power only where light refuses to shine. This conversation about racism, narcissism, eugenics, and the illusions of superiority is ultimately about the shared awakening. It invites us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the shadow of the human psyche is not out there. It is within, and yet within us also dwells the power to transmute it.